Hello, podcast listeners. It's been a while since you heard from me. Thank you for your patience. I think you'll find that today's interview is well worth waiting for. You'll hear about a most unexpected project that is adventurous, challenging, was a bit daunting, but will likely be extraordinarily rewarding. It's the world's newest wine frontier. Let's go.
And I asked one of the guys to go, is this good or bad? Clearly this is a thing. What does it mean for my grapes? And he's like, no, this is like one of the best possible omens. So I literally, sometimes I think that this whole thing is sent by the gods, destined to happen. And I just got to be lucky enough to be the dude to do it.
I received an invitation a year ago September asking if I'd like to talk with Michael Juergens, who runs the Drinking and Knowing Things newsletter. And he's written a book with the same name. He's a professional speaker, a professor, a marathon runner, and is studying to qualify as a master of wine. He owns the award-winning SoCal Rum Company, and with the little time he has left, he has become the director, the champion of the Kingdom of Bhutan wine industry. Yes, the magical Kingdom of Bhutan in the Himalayas. The interview was recorded in October of last year, but I've been waiting for them to plant some firm roots. Yeah, pun intended. Before sharing this interview with the world. After a couple of years in the ground, the vineyards are growing well. When I first aired this interview on my radio show, my listeners were some of the first to hear the name of the wine he will someday be crafting, and how they came up with the Divine brand name. It was about 2 p.m. when Michael Juergens and I met up on the back patio of 4th Street Cellars in Santa Rosa, Sonoma County, California. He was passing through town for a conference. We enjoyed glasses of wine while he shared his story with how he unwittingly became the head honcho of the Bhutan Wine Company. When you hear how energetic he is, you'll understand how he can do all the other things he has taken on. As I intimated, it wasn't his intention to kickstart the wine industry in Bhutan, but he was in the country for one of his other passions.
Yeah, so I went there to run a marathon. And so when we got there, we're traveling around in this country, and it's just this breathtaking agricultural paradise. So literally, it's like Garden of Eden. They're just magnificent terraced slopes, and everywhere you look, there's these beautiful plants growing, and every single thing you eat, it's the best example of that ever. It's like, this is the greatest carrot, or this is the greatest cucumber, or this is the great, like, you're waxing poetic about stuff that you wouldn't normally wax poetic about.
Yeah, I saw the pictures of the hillsides, the terraced hillsides, and they do look reminiscent of the Douro region in Portugal.
Totally. That was one of the analogies I was drawing very early on. I was like, this looks like the Douro. So I'm asking people where the vineyards are, because I'm convinced that vineyards have to exist at a place like this. Yeah. And I'm asking everybody, and everyone's like, we don't know what you're talking about. And then eventually, I was at dinner with a bunch of government people, and I said, where are the vineyards? And they said, we don't have any. And I got offended, and we've been drinking.
Being a wine aficionado.
Yeah, it was literally, I was like, how could you not do this? You have to do, you must do this. You must start today. You must plant vineyards. This is perfect for grapes. And so they listened to me. It's a very spiritual culture. When we plant a vineyard, the monks come out and they say prayers over the vineyard, and they chant stuff and play music. And
so, yeah, you must have, well, I know you did from reading that you had to overcome a lot of hurdles. First and foremost, the Bhutanese authorities, they had to understand what you had in mind and agree to do it. But then, of course, you have to wonder about the soil. Is it the suitable soil? But you had somebody that knew the answer to that question.
Yeah, so we definitely had some challenges from the authorities. Should we do this? And I think one of the things that helped spur it along was, I never said to them, I want to build a wine industry to enrich myself. I was saying, I'm a wine guy. Like, I'm a passionate person about wine. I think you should do it because you could do some cool stuff here. And I would love to see what you could do. So I was saying, you guys go do it. And they're like, we don't know how. And so I kept saying, well, do this and do this next and do this next thing. And then I wrote a 10-year plan for them and said, here it is. Wow. Do all this. And then that's when they came back and said, we totally want to do this, but we want to do it with you. So I think that had I gone in with, here, I'm an American guy who wants to come, use your country to fill my pockets, it might have been a different story. But that wasn't what I was trying to do.
But the undertaking is extraordinary because, like you just hinted at, not only are you starting a viticulture region and a winery, but also you're creating an entire industry that doesn't exist yet over there, which has to follow the international laws and all kinds of things.
Yeah, and not only are you starting an industry from a legal perspective, it's also a cultural perspective.
Another challenge you had, well, I might be jumping ahead here. If you got some better stories, let me know. But one of the biggest challenges you had was finding grapevines to be sent over there, tracking down a nursery who would want to help you, and then getting them there.
Yeah, so I had to get grapevines to the country. So I had to convince someone to sell me grapevines. And of course, every time you try to buy grapevines, they say, well, where are you going to plant them? And no one would believe that I was building the wine industry in the Kingdom of Bhutan. And I think they would literally just not respond to me or stop returning my phone calls, or they all thought it was a scam. And the only way I finally convinced somebody is I physically drove from Southern California up to Bakersfield, went to the nursery itself and sat down and said, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, here's a check, sell me some damn grapevines. And then they were like, okay, this guy's legit. He might be crazy, but he's legit about wanting to buy some grapevines. And so we got them, and then I had to get them to Bhutan, which was a whole nother thing. And obviously, you think about like the phytosanitary requirements for importation of grapevines. For a country that's never imported grapevines before, they don't have any rules, but they're worried about it. So as everyone's trying to figure out like what should we do about this, and so we had to kind of explain all the tests that we were doing on the vines here before we got them over there, and what those things tested for, and some of it you're testing for things, like, I don't know, leaf roll virus, right? And they're like, what's leaf roll virus? And then you got to educate them on what it is, why we don't like it, and why we're trying to prevent it, and so we're testing it. So it was this a lot of education in the early years of making this thing happen.
And the story that you're ready to go up to the vineyard site and the next day, and they still hadn't arrived yet.
Well, it was worse than that. We had eventually decided that we were going to ship them by plane because it was becoming a problem to ship them by shipping container. And they were getting hung up in California. So I was at the airport, and so were my grapes, but they wouldn't load them on the plane. And so there was more problems with the paperwork, and once again, no one would believe you're shipping things to Bhutan. So I got on the plane in LA not knowing if the grapes were going to even leave LA. And it was a total leap of faith. And so then we get to Bhutan, and everyone's like, well, where's the grapevines? And I go, I hope they're going to show up. And so we were planting the first vineyard, and we had, the whole country's excited about it. And I have a team of 30 people, scheduled to go 8 a.m. at this place. We've got the monks coming out to bless the site and do this whole ritual. I don't have grapevines. And I'm sitting there at the hotel, and I'm just going, oh man, this is really going to be a fiasco. I've just spent years convincing these guys to do this, and now I'm trying to do it, and I don't know if it's going to happen. And about 5:30, the truck rolled in, and the guy's like, hey, we got your grapes. I honestly, it was like the gods watching. Funny story, the next morning, we go down to plant the grapes. So this is the first vineyard. We're planting the first set of grapes. And it had been kind of raining a little bit. And then the rain stopped, and the sun came out. And you ever seen when there's a ring around the sun?
Yes.
I'm sure there's a scientific explanation for it, right? But that happened right as we started planting the grapes, and apparently that's a symbol of something important to the Bhutanese. Like, everyone dropped their hoes and shovels and pointed up, and they're like going, chattering away in Bhutanese about like this. And I asked one of the guys to go, is this good or bad? Clearly this is a thing. What does it mean for my grapes? And he's like, no, this is like one of the best possible omens. So I literally, sometimes I think that this whole thing is sent by the gods, destined to happen, and I just got to be lucky enough to be the dude to do it.
It was ideal timing to have the halo caused by tiny ice crystals in the cirrus clouds around the sun. How fortunate to have father-son present an omen when you're attempting something new in a small country where religion plays a vital role. As it turns out, he's become a respected man in Bhutan. The locals are supportive because the people lead a simple life and he's creating great potential and paying well for their services. Interestingly, the country is not just carbon neutral, it's carbon negative.
Yeah, carbon negative. So big focus on sustainability. And they're trying to become the world's first 100% organic country. So every single crop, every single vertical will all be produced organically. People come from all around the world to study sustainable agriculture in Bhutan, which is good and bad, right? So the earth there is just really as pure as it could possibly be. I mean, it is completely fertile, unspoiled universe. But it also means that you can't use things like fungicides to keep the mildew down and other types of treatment protocols that you might need. And so we're trying to figure out how to balance the needs of the grapes versus this country that's very focused on sustainable agriculture.
But you're hoping the breezes are enough to kind of diminish the possibility of mildew and mold.
Yeah, I mean, there's monsoons in the summer. I think that will be our biggest problem. From here on out until eternity, monsoon pressure in the summer. And so we have a variety of things that we're experimenting with. One of them is putting plastic over the canopies. So, I don't know, do you know the koshu grape in Japan? Have you seen these?
No.
So they grow this grape in Japan called koshu, and rainy areas. And they put these little hats over each cluster. It's trippy as hell. Like, well, you should Google koshu hats or grape hats. And so we thought about doing that. And then our viticulturalist, he said, I think what we can do, I think what would be easier is if we put plastic, like an umbrella, about 5 feet above the canopy. So it'll keep the rain, it'll shed the rain off. So we're experimenting with that. We also experimented with vine spacing, with the idea that, if you can get enough space in the vineyards, you'll get good airflow coming through. Sure. So we're playing with that. We're literally right now talking about different trellising methods that we think might help, reduce the risk of mildew. One of them being a pergola. So you get a good canopy above, and then get the grapes hanging below it. But all of this is, there's no knowledge to pull from, right? Nothing's been tried like this before. And so we don't know. And for me, I don't have the luxury of, hey, let's try this for 10 years, and if it doesn't work, let's try something else. So we're trying a bunch of stuff simultaneously. That's good. To figure out, we're going to quickly fail and get rid of the stuff that doesn't work. So we're trying like 7 different trellising methods. And you know what? I know 5 of them aren't going to work, but I need 2 of them, or 1 or 2 to work.
You're making a name for yourself because you're going to be the pioneer in Bhutan. That's going to be, hopefully in the future, everyone will be talking about the success that you had there. And one thing you don't have to worry too much about is pests, other than maybe birds. But you're not worried about phylloxera. You're not worried about viruses either, and Pierce's disease and those things.
So you are correct in that I don't have to worry about phylloxera. Don't have to worry about Pierce's or leaf roll or a lot of these things unless I bring it in with me. So I'm really careful not to. But I do have new things that most other wineries or wine regions don't have to deal with, like monkeys. Not a lot of thoughtware out there in the industry about how to keep monkeys out of vineyards. But monkeys are a problem.
And they're clever. And deer can get over a deer fence, so a monkey can.
Well, so at one point, we had one of our first vineyards that got planted. The deer got in, and they went to town. And so we're having this conversation about how to keep deer out. And the people are like, well, what's the best approach? And I go, well, mostly what people do here is they just fence. We'll need to put a fence around the vineyard. And they're like, okay, how big a fence? And I'm like, 10 feet probably. And they're like, 10 feet? And I go, yeah, like 10 feet. And our viticulturalist was like, yeah, we usually go 8 to 10 feet. Deer can jump pretty high. And they had this argument with us. They're like, there is no way a deer can jump 8 feet high. And I go, absolutely. So we're having this debate. And finally I go, how big are your deer? And they showed me a picture, and they're like the size of dogs. They're like these little tiny things like this big.
Pygmy deers over there.
Yeah, they're like pygmy deers. Yeah, so I'm like, we probably don't need to have a 10-foot high fence. We can probably get by with like a 4-foot high fence. So we have deers, we have monkeys. One of our vineyards this year, I can actually show you the text where they sent it. They're like, do you have any idea what this thing is? And it looked like a neon green slug caterpillar looking thing. And I go, I don't know what that is. And I go, it's in your country. Do you guys know what it is? And they're like, we've never seen this before, but it sure does seem to like grapevines. Right. And so I'm like, okay, how many are there? And they're like, well, we've seen a few, but it's a Buddhist country, so you can't kill anything. And so like I have workers carefully picking up the caterpillars and carrying them to a different spot and letting them go. So yeah, I don't have phylloxera, but I got monkeys and other things.
Green slime.
And green slime, yeah.
Wow.
And I am convinced that we're going to find some other stuff that we haven't thought about yet.
Sure, it's a whole new thing.
What I'm really, really hoping is that I have a Yeti problem. Because, like, I don't, who knows if they exist or if they don't exist. Bhutan's one of the places people go to look for them. And I just would love it if I could, have my trail cameras set up in my vineyards, and there's Bigfoot over there picking some Cabernet grapes. And
8-foot creature.
Yeah. Yeah. So we laugh about that a lot. Like, what if we have Yetis in the vineyard? So we'll see.
Tell me about the location again. So you're in the shadow of the Himalayas, and you can go really high. Your highest right now is 8,900 feet, and you're about 6 acres so far?
No, in total planted, we have about between 40 and 50 acres in total across all 8 vineyards. But the country is kind of pasted onto the side of the Himalayas. So on the south side, it's about 500 feet in elevation, and the north side is about, the highest point is 27,000 feet. So it's very, it's uphill all the way, basically. And that distance from north to south is a few hundred miles. It's not a big place. Right. So there's lots of different elevations to choose from in there. We have, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I have 3 vineyards at about 3,000 feet. I have 3 vineyards at about 6,000 feet, and I have 2 vineyards at just under 9,000. And once again, we don't know what's going to work.
Yeah. Tell me about the varieties you chose.
It would have been cool if there had been indigenous varieties that we could have experimented with, but there weren't, right? So we get to pick whatever we want.
If there was, you wouldn't be doing this.
And if there was, right, exactly. So I was like, hey, look, we can plant anything. This is a guessing game. So let's plant stuff that at least people are familiar with, and we'll have less trouble educating people on, if I planted Ayer Yitiko or Jafark or some crazy obscure variety in Bhutan, that just makes it even more weird. So we went with standard Bordeaux varietals, Cab, Malbec, Merlot, and then Pinot Noir, Syrah, and Cab Franc. That was our first batch of reds. First batch of whites we did Chardonnay, Petit Mansang, and Sauvignon Blanc.
And explain why you chose a Petit Mansang.
It's super rain tolerant, and so that's my safety plan. Because I know those grapes are going to grow in monsoons. I don't know about the rest of them, so that was my safety plan. And then when we planted the next round of vineyards, we added in. We kept all the ones we had originally, but we added in Chenin and Riesling for the whites, which makes some sense, right? Cool climate stuff. And then we added in Tempranillo and Sangiovese on the reds at the advice of my viticulturalist. So I got this guy, he's a professor at Cornell, who's our viticulturist for the project. And so I'm not the science guy. He's been doing a lot of research and analysis, and he kind of came back and said, I think we should try Sangiovese and Tempranillo. And I said, all right, I like Chianti, I like Rioja. Yeah. Like, we could sell that. That's a good profile. So we'll see. I bet that at least half of what we planted is not going to work, or it's not going to work well.
Which isn't too bad. Trial and error, that's been going on for centuries. That's one hurdle they can overcome. A worldwide pandemic? Did that bring the project to a screeching halt? Well, not necessarily. I'll continue with Michael Juergens of the Bhutan Wine Company after a short break on the Wine Road Podcast.
The historic Mount View Hotel and Spa is a 33-room, family-owned boutique hotel located in the heart of downtown Calistoga, California. This distinctive hotel features original architectural elements complemented by Art Deco interiors. Welcoming amenities include 2 restaurants, Amaro Italian Kitchen and Johnny's, a full-service luxury spa, the Indie Blue Salon, a beautiful pool, Mineral Springs Jet Spa, lounge areas, and this summer, a safe, enjoyable outdoor movie venue, the Moonshine Theater. A stay at the Mount View Hotel and Spa is not only enriching for the soul, you can change the world while you sleep. Their Change the World While You Sleep program contributed 50% of their profits to children, health, women's, and environmental causes. Currently, the Mount View is hosting dinner and a movie fundraising events to support local nonprofits. For the schedule of movies and more information on Wine Country's most unique hotel and spa, visit mountviewhotel.com.
We're back on the Wine Road. I'm Jeff Davis, and my guest is Michael Juergens, who fell into a project that wasn't planned, but he has more or less been handed the keys to the Kingdom of Bhutan's first ever wine industry. While overcoming challenges, he was progressing quite well. And then the world shut down.
That's been a problem, particularly when you're trying to clear and plant 100 acres of vineyard space, which we were not able to do all of it, but we cleared about 50 acres during the pandemic, and we planted about 40 of it. So
you were able to get in at some point.
I didn't go, but we were able to ship grapes in. And remember, the Bhutanese as a people are ridiculously skilled agriculturalists. I mean, they grow some of the world's best crops in very specific verticals already and have for many, many years. They know how to grow stuff there. They just have never grown vinifera there. Yeah. And so the good news is with a little bit of instruction, they pick up stuff pretty quickly. And we have teams that have been overseeing the other 6 vineyards that we have planted, they already had a couple years of experience with those grapes. So they weren't totally clueless. And we did a lot of WhatsApp stuff, a lot of FaceTime from the vineyard, a lot of consultation. But yeah, we were able to get the grapes there. It was equally as problematic as the prior time. Remember when the ship was stuck in the Suez Canal? Uh-huh. Yeah, that was when I was trying to ship grapes to Bhutan.
Are you kidding?
I was trying to get a container to put my grapes in. They're like, we don't have any containers, and no ships are going through the Suez Canal, because you have to go through the Suez Canal to get to India. So this whole thing has just been just one crazy, and then this happened, and then this other thing happened, and you're just like,
Your first vintage was supposed to be harvested in 2020.
Correct. Yeah, and we let it fall because of the pandemic. Bhutan has emerged relatively unscathed from the pandemic, but the way that they accomplished that was very early on, they locked the borders down completely. No one in and out. And that's the way it was for about the first year. And that was during what would have been our first harvest. So we let those grapes fall. And then this year, we were hopeful that we'd get another chance to have the first harvest. And the pandemic was just creating too many challenges. All the breakouts that were happening in India were putting a lot of pressure on the country. And so we just said, look, we'll skip it again. We'll do another lap. We'll pick it up next year.
So in some of the early articles I was reading, you had to build a winery. What's the status of that right now?
So the status is we've got the land, I've got the blueprints, I've got the environmental approvals, I have all the permits. It is 100% ready to go, but we've not broken ground yet. Also, due to the pandemic, the supply of construction labor in Bhutan relies pretty heavily on Indian resources, and border's been closed. So the few construction resources that are in the country are overutilized and are really expensive. And I'm sort of like, well, if I'm letting the grapes fall, it's not going to do me any good to bust my hump trying to build a winery. So our plan is to try to break ground on the winery after the first of the year, and it'll take about a year to make.
Right.
So,
are you going to try to hang on to the grapes you harvest, and you're going to save the juice for the time being, or you're just going to let them mature a little bit more?
We're going to we're just going to let them mature, through till next summer. Our plan is to make wine next summer. The winery won't be constructed yet fully, but we have a warehouse facility that we can use if we need to. So it would be ideal if we could be in our own facility, but if it's not ready yet, it's not ready yet. We'll figure it out. We'll make do with something else.
Well, that's been going on also for centuries.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So there are a range of microclimates, and your preference is to make product terroir wines or in vineyard designate wines, and you're not going to be just making Planck, or bulk wine as I've read, and you're even thinking like a luxury brand, $150 a bottle.
Yeah, I think we our goal is to capture the essence of Bhutan in a bottle, and I mean you've looked at the photos. It's just this captivating, breathtaking country. And if I can capture that in a bottle and showcase it to the world under, brand Bhutan, that to me is far more interesting than another oaked Chardonnay. Like I could make a Chardonnay and I could mallow it and, oak the hell out of it, and that's not very interesting. No. So our goal is to make these wines. Will they sell for $150? I think they potentially could sell for even much more. Their Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy has a similar project in China called Aoyun. Have you heard of it? Aoyun?
Certainly know Hennessy, though.
Yeah, I mean, these guys know a little bit about luxury brands, right? And they have put money into a project with very similar to ours. It happens to be on the other side of the Himalayas, across the Chinese border, and that wine currently today sells for $300 a bottle. So I don't think I'm out of my head thinking, this would potentially be a higher end wine.
And from what you said about the way food tastes over there, I'm almost kind of really curious to see what this would taste like. I mean, it might have a higher level of quality that you would never expect.
I am telling you, the food there is, and it's not the most prettiest food, by the way. You'll get a carrot, and the carrot will be kind of like misshapen and, brownish. But then when you eat it, it's the best carrot you've ever had in your life. They have this dish there that they make with these traditional Bhutanese peppers. And these peppers are kind of like longer green peppers. And they are the best peppers I've ever had, bar none. They're powerful, but not offensively powerful. And they're sweet and they're savory all at the same time. And you eat it and you're like, oh my God, like, what? This is unbelievable. Which is one of the things that led me originally to be so determined to find the vineyards, because I'm like, if the carrots taste like this, the grapes have got to be just ridiculously spectacular. And that's why I was walking around going, hey, where's the vineyards? Where's that? Like, my girlfriend was with me, and she was like, will you just stop asking about the vineyards? I'm like, someone's going to know something. I'm hitting up the hotel staff and the people on the streets and everywhere I went. Like, where's the vineyards? Where's the vineyards?
He certainly was onto something that is now progressing. Imagine in the future, when the winery is up and producing, you could visit and maybe lend a hand. While sitting around during COVID, he was considering ideas like inviting guests to see the beautiful, happiest place on earth while joining in on a harvest, then also get a chance to see the monastery nearby, the Paro Toxing Monastery.
Yeah, so Bhutan is a real bucket list destination for a lot of people. And they limit the number of tourists that come in, and they control who can come in and for how long and for what purpose and so on and so forth. But people want to go. Obviously, wine tourism is another thing people are super interested in. I thought this would be a really neat way to give people a different way to experience Bhutan, to actually get into the country, and also, showcase what we're doing with the wine industry, make a little money at the same time. So we had expected that this was people were going to be pretty excited about this, and then there was a pandemic.
Yeah.
So
you don't really know yet.
Yeah, we don't really know yet, and
but it's another interesting thing they can do if were already considering maybe going in that region.
Totally, yeah. But I think the way that you go to, like, you can't just decide to go to Bhutan. You have to go through a formal Bhutanese travel company. And because of the visa requirements and because of everything else. So you would have to kind of opt in. It wouldn't be like, oh, we were thinking about going there, and while we're here, we'll do some vineyard stuff. You kind of have to plan it in advance. So, I mean, we'll see. I think it would be amazing, and I am sure that at some point, as things start to open back up again, the Bhutanese borders will start to see the tourists come in, and probably 30% of their economy is based on tourism. So it's not having it is not super great for them.
And you must be just chomping at the bit to just get back there and just get going again.
Yeah, I haven't been back since February of 2020, so it's been almost 18 months. And
you start a major project on the other side of the world, and you can't even do anything about it other than on FaceTime.
Yeah, it's immensely frustrating sometimes that there's just certain things that you can't do.
We didn't even talk about the name of the wine yet.
Yeah, so
is it official?
I could probably break the news. Yeah, I'll break it live on your show. How's that? So we had thought we were going to go one direction with the brand, and when we tried to get some legal protection for it, we got in a bit of a trademark dispute with somebody else, and so we deemed it would be easiest if we just kind of walked and came up with a new brand. So we spent a lot of time thinking about it and couldn't come up with anything that we loved. And so we went back to Bhutan, and in Bhutan, when a baby's born, they take the baby to the monks, and they have special monks whose job it is to name babies. And they give the baby its first name and its last name. So you can't tell who's related to anybody, because even if it's your brother, he has a different last name than you. And the monks will be like, your name is Karma Shearing, and your name is something else. And so we said, hey, look, we have a baby. It's our winery. Why don't we ask the monks to name it? And so we went back and we asked the master namer if he would name our winery for the country. And he said, yeah.
How incredible.
Yeah, super cool story. So he goes off and thinks about it for about 2 months. I mean, no small job naming a winery. Comes back and he goes, here's the name of your winery. And the name of the winery is Serkem. Serkem. Yep. And so I go, well, all right, that's interesting, I guess. It's not the most catchiest name that I've ever heard. Right. And he goes, oh, you have to understand why we think that this winery should be named Serkem. And I said, why is that? And he goes, well, in the Bhutanese tradition, when you go to visit a Buddhist temple, you would bring with you an offering for the gods. And sometimes that offering is money, sometimes it's food, and sometimes it is alcohol. And if it is alcohol, the special alcohol that is given to the gods is called Serkem.
Wow.
And I was like...
That elevates it a bit, doesn't it?
That was what I said. I was like, I love that. So, yeah, and you heard it here first. We got all our trademarks filed on it, so I think we're good to...
Yeah, I'm sure that one's not taken.
there was less demand for that one than there was for our previous one, but yeah, Bhutan is considered to be like the land of happiness. They measure gross national happiness instead of gross domestic product, and that's kind of what it's known for. So, one of the roads we tried to go down was working that in, because wine makes you happy, and wine should make you happy, and wine should be a happy thing, and from a happy land and happy people and happy wine, but we couldn't figure out a branding strategy around that worked. Like happy wine just kind of sounded too...
I almost kind of liked gross happiness.
Gross happiness. But then it's, would people think, oh, it's gross, and how would it translate for non-U.S. speakers? Yeah, it's believe me. So my girlfriend, who is the CEO of the company, she spent many...
She's a marketing gal, right?
Yeah. She did global marketing for some of the world's biggest companies, brand launches. So, this is right in her power alley. And she couldn't come up with something. So if she can't do it, I know I'm not going to come up with something better. But the monks came, they came up with something cool.
You probably don't want to mention the other name that you had in mind, but that was a pretty cool name.
It was a pretty cool name, yeah. The challenge with it is it strayed a little too close to another popular brand of wine that I didn't see it, in my opinion. We weren't trying to do anything sneaky or untoward, but they felt that it could potentially cause confusion. And I sort of looked at it and went like, okay, yeah, probably easier to just find something else. And so we did.
How do you spell that?
Serkem. Serkem. I'm excited. And literally, I've been dying to kind of break the news, and here I just did it live with you. So
at least you're in the prime wine region of the country.
Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, now, hopefully, people will be like, oh, wow, we got to get our hands on some of that Sercam, and they'll go down and start asking the distributors, and the distributors will call me up, and I'll tell them I don't have any.
Yeah, don't ask for that yet. Interestingly, I've come across some reference to Sercam on Google Images, but it's not on the website yet, bhutanwine.com. And here's an intriguing notion to contemplate. He touched upon this situation as we were close to wrapping up.
I also was thinking about this, which is, imagine if you had the first bottle of wine ever bottled in Napa, right?
Yeah.
That would be a treasure, right? Or the first bottle of wine ever bottled in America. That would be in the Smithsonian. Or if you had the first bottle of wine ever bottled in France, like that would be in a museum. So I'm about to have the first wine ever produced in a country, and there's not a lot of countries that even have that chance to do that ever again. And I get one chance to do kind of the first bottling. So what we're planning to do right now is something that we've been tentatively calling first barrel. We need to have a better name for it, but we want to take and bring grapes in from all the different vineyards and create the very first barrel of wine ever made in Bhutan, and then bottle those specially and kind of put them in a nice fancy box and sell them as collector's items, maybe give them to some museums and so on and so forth. So we're going to do that, but I'm not as worried about the lab work, right? Because it's more about having the blend of all the different vineyards together. And so my guess is the wine price is not going to be, the best example of what we could produce, but it'll be the most meaningful. Yeah. So we'll do that for sure, and then hopefully, based on the quality of the fruit, we'll bottle some other stuff.
And eventually, vineyard designate, microclimate regions.
That would be my plan. That would be, Grail. And we're seeing some pretty massive differences today with like the fruit that's coming out of our vineyards at 3,000 feet is very different than the fruit that's coming out at 9,000, right? And the varietals are thriving differently as well. So like we have this one vineyard where the Bordeaux varietals they're just crushing it, and I have another vineyard where Syrah refuses to grow completely; it just will not grow. So like,
and that's surprising because I would think Syrah is well known for being a cool climate grape too.
And Syrah is also pretty. That's why they plant it out in Nevada because it grows pretty well.
Either way,
yeah.
Look at Anderson Valley,
Yeah, perfect example. So I have no idea why Syrah doesn't do well in that. I don't know if it's the soil or what. So there's definitely some things we have yet to dial in, and we're learning every day.
At least in your favor, it's southern exposure. So if it was looking the other way and you thought these are great terraces, it'd be like, well, yeah.
Well, but you have to understand the way that the land is there. Like you go around a corner and then it's a north terrace, and then there, you could have any aspect that you wanted for sure. Which is, I actually think it's at some level the vast degree of diversity there is a massive hedge for us against global warming. Because or climate change, however you want to say it, as climate change is impacting other regions, certainly Champagne is struggling with it right now. And you think about it 100 years from now, there will likely, continue to be regions that are impacted. In Bhutan, I can just go down the street and I go up another 1,500 feet or down 1,500 feet or whatever, and I've got the ability to plant new vineyards in a way that Bordeaux can't. Like Bordeaux's one elevation right by the ocean, not a lot of space left. But I can do that in Bhutan, and I think that lends itself to a higher percentage likelihood of a longevity for the industry that is good for everybody. Yeah. And we're trying to do this for a 50 year, 100 year kind of time horizon. I'm not doing this to pump out two vintages and go home.
Sure.
I mean, I'll be dead by the time these guys figure out how to really make the best wine.
Yeah. Wow.
This is going to make a hell of a story someday.
Oh. I can see you running with this in all kinds of different directions.
Oh yeah. I would love to. I would love nothing more to have a book that sort of culminates in us winning the next Judgment of Paris, with the Bhutanese wine, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. Like, here's all the dumb crap that we had to deal with for years to get this to where it is today. But I'm telling you, if my theory is correct, that every single thing that grows in that country is the best thing that you've ever tasted in your life, the grapes have got to make amazing wine.
You think?
You would just have to believe that, and I do believe that.
It'll end up being like a Penfolds, just everyone $3,000 a bottle, and it'll always sell out.
I hope so. Yeah, wouldn't that be awesome? Yeah, if we're having to, allocate minuscule quantities over here, and somebody else gets a little bit more, and yeah, that would be fantastic.
Put my name on the top of the allocation list, would you? Because
Absolutely.
I want to at least try at least a glass.
Well, here's what's crazy too. Is like, I'm going out. Ordinarily, if you were to do a podcast or a show or something, you bring a bottle of wine to taste the person. Here, let me share this with you. I don't have anything to share, and it's a little bit of a bummer.
But no, you brought me a T-shirt.
I did bring you a T-shirt. That's correct. And you're the only one in the world with the Bhutan Wine Company T-shirt right now. You and me. You were the only two.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm honored.
Just wear it. Make sure you wear it every day.
Okay. Get some photos. Get it on Instagram.
Make sure you tag Bhutan Wine with it when you do. Yeah.
Well, I wish you the greatest success, and I'm really interested to be following this and see how it's going to come out.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. This has been a delight.
Look up BhutanWine.com. He's an author. He's created the highest scoring rum to date with his SoCal Silver Rum. He's a Som, a professor, and the unintentional entrepreneur in Bhutan. Michael Juergens. As you can tell, he's a kick to have a drink with. I hope you enjoyed his story, and remember, you can find more interviews and wine trivia at onthewineroad.us or .com. I'm on Facebook /onthewineroad. Go ahead and follow the page if you would. And I'm on Instagram as JD Wine Road. The show's theme was composed by Miguel de Oliveira and is researched, written, and produced by me. And I thank you for listening. I'll see you next time on The Wine Road. I'm Jeff Davis.